As of right now, there's still a lot of football that needs to be played, and the college football playoff rankings aren't quite set in stone yet. But if things go the way I'm expecting, Ohio State shouldn't even sniff the playoff. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'll be posting college football videos every day all season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. Entering this weekend, the Michigan-Ohio State game was being considered one of the top games of the entire college football season. Ohio State was undefeated and ranked number 2, where Michigan was undefeated and ranked number 3. Whoever would win would get a spot in the Big Ten title game, and with a win or loss, likely advances to the college football playoff. Meanwhile, the team that loses, although they're not out of it entirely, their chances aren't looking all that good. And after seeing Ohio State lose to Michigan by 22 points, I don't care what happens, but barring absolute chaos, Ohio State should not even sniff the playoff at all. Before I talk about Ohio State's season as a whole, let's take a look back at this beatdown of a game. Now, early on, it looked like Ohio State was potentially going to run away with the game. They scored a touchdown within the first 5 minutes, and they led 10-3 at the end of the first quarter. But after that point, they were outscored by Michigan 42-13. And in the second half, the Buckeyes were outscored 28-3. Although Michigan pretty much didn't play with Heisman candidate Blake Corum, they did everything to Ohio State. For the game, the Wolverines had only 16 first downs, but they racked up 530 yards of total offense. Nearly 300 of those yards came on the ground, as Donovan Edwards had himself the game of his career, rushing for over 200 yards with 2 rushing scores. For the game, the Wolverines averaged more than 7 yards per carry against this Ohio State defense. It was a decent first half for the Buckeyes, as they still led by 3, but the offense completely forgot how to play football in the second half, and I guess you could say the defense forgot how to play football as well. I mean, this was a game in which Michigan looked like one of the best teams in the country, and Ohio State looked like just every other Big Ten team. I mean, the fact that they were undefeated at home and trying to avenge last year's embarrassing loss, the fact that Ohio State got blown out is flat out embarrassing. And like I said, they shouldn't sniff the college football playoff regardless of what happens the rest of the way. So looking at where things currently stand, here's how I have things shaping out. Georgia is an absolute lock whether they win or lose. If LSU knocks off Georgia next weekend, they deserve to be in. With Michigan in the Big Ten title game next weekend, they deserve to be in as well. TCU is currently up by 3 scores, and if things hold, I think they're likely going to be in regardless of what happens in the Big 12 title game. Then you have USC, who still has to play Notre Dame, and they have to play in the Pac-12 championship, but if they win both those games, I think they're more than deserving. So if things go according to plan and Ohio State is one of those fringe teams, absolutely no way do they deserve to be one of those playoff teams. Now, if there's absolute chaos and TCU loses in the Big 12 title game, USC loses either tonight or next weekend in the Pac-12 title game, and Georgia pretty much wipes out LSU, eliminating them from contention, then there's going to be some case to be made for Ohio State. But I'm here to say, regardless of what that case is, Ohio State should be nowhere near the discussion. And it's not just because of today's embarrassing loss, in which again, that's pretty humiliating. But it's looking back at Ohio State's season as a whole, and especially the football they've been playing over the last month. Sure, they have a win in week 1 against Notre Dame, which is looking like a pretty impressive win, considering the Irish are now a top 15 team. But in that game, Ohio State didn't really dominate, and it was a game that I thought honestly, Notre Dame lost more than Ohio State won. Things were looking good for Ohio State over the next 2 months, but like I mentioned, they just haven't been playing good football over the last month at all. Looking back at their schedule from a month ago, they knocked off Penn State on the road, which yes, on paper is an impressive win. But if you watch that game, that was a game that was pretty much dominated by Penn State until late in the fourth quarter. With 9 minutes left in that game, Penn State had a 5-point lead. But some absolutely sloppy offense from Penn State allowed Ohio State to score 4 touchdowns in the final 8 minutes of the game. Again, I'll give the Buckeyes credit for pulling out the 13-point victory, but that was a game that was pretty much handed to them by the sloppy play of Penn State's offense. Overall, I just didn't think Ohio State looked like a top 4 team in that game, and I think they got bailed out by some really bad plays from from the Nittany Lions late in that contest. But like I said, a win is a win, and it's a solid resume win against Penn State. Then the next game, Ohio State struggled to put away Northwestern. Now, I know a lot of Ohio State fans will say that the conditions were awful, but this was a game in which you were favored by 40 points. I don't care if you're playing in a hurricane, the fact that they were only up by a touchdown late in the game against Northwestern was pretty concerning. Even if you can't throw the ball at all, you should have been putting points on the board against Northwestern with ease. But Ohio State struggled to put them away, and they didn't really ice the game until 4 minutes left in that fourth quarter. The following game, they blew out Indiana, and we're not even going to talk about that game. But last weekend on the road at Maryland, Ohio State was on upset watch. At the end of the first half, they actually trailed the Terps by 3 points. In the fourth quarter, Maryland was able to climb back all the way to within 3 points, and they had a chance to potentially take the lead or at least tie the game on a drive late in that contest. But Maryland completely forgot how to play football, and they couldn't get anything going on offense to potentially pull off the upset. Maryland actually did have one final shot with 1 minute left in the game. Granted, they had to go 90 yards, but if they would have gotten a field goal, it would have sent the game into overtime where anything could have happened. Or if they could have driven down the field, they could have knocked off Ohio State as time expired. But instead, they had a turnover in the end zone, and Ohio State ended up winning with a very comfortable 13-point lead. Again, at the end of the day, I get that a win is a win, but the fact that they were on true upset watch this late in the game against a Maryland team that's barely going to be going bowling, I thought that was pretty concerning by the Buckeyes. So when looking at how they fared over the last month, they needed a come from behind victory against Penn State, and Penn State completely forgetting how to play football in order to win that game. Then, against Northwestern, one of the worst teams in all of Power 5, they struggled and barely were able to put them away. On the road at Maryland, again, a team that's barely bowl eligible, they were only up by 3 points late in the fourth quarter and needed a last-second turnover to really put the game out of reach. Then, when they faced their toughest opponent of the entire season in Michigan, at home, they lose by 3 scores. Talent-wise, I know Ohio State is easily a top 10 team in the country, but when looking at the resume and how they fared against the top teams in the country, especially how they've played over the last month, I just don't think there's any way you can make a case they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. Like I said, if there's absolute chaos and USC and TCU are both potentially eliminated from the playoff discussion, sure, at that point, I think you might be able to make a case that Ohio State should be one of the 4 teams. But I don't see USC and TCU both falling out of playoff contention, and if that's the case, I just can't see the playoff committee giving the Buckeyes another chance to redeem themselves. Sure, things can go crazy, and Ohio State can sneak into the college football playoff, and they could win a game and make this entire video look incredibly stupid. Which, if that's the case, I'll eat my words and congratulate Ohio State on making it to the college football championship game. But like I mentioned, from what I've seen overall on the season, and especially from the last month, I just don't think the Buckeyes have any reasonable argument to be one of the 4 best teams in all of college football. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there's still a lot of games that need to be played, and there's a lot that needs to happen before we see what the top 4 actually looks like. At this point, it looks like the only guarantees are Georgia and Michigan, so there's still a number of teams that are going to be fighting for those final 2 spots. So what are your thoughts on Ohio State getting blown out at home by Michigan today? Were you shocked by the loss, or were you expecting Michigan to go in there and pull off a victory for the 2nd straight year? Also, what are your thoughts on Ohio State and their chances of reaching the college football playoff? Do you think they're deserving of being one of the final 4 teams, or do you think after this performance they don't deserve to be anywhere near the playoff discussion? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you love college football, this is definitely the place for you. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm posting videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe if you call yourself a college football fan. The next week is going to be pretty crazy in the college football world, so you definitely are not going to want to miss any of the upcoming videos. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.